Why hello there everyone. Today I have a pretty exciting run for you, and that is because this whole build, or the lack of a build I should say, revolves around the Shattered Shackle keepsake. And this is the buffed Shattered Shackle after it got patched that one time. And so ever since it got buffed in that one patch, I've been really keen on trying it out on a legit run, and so I finally did it. This is 32 heat as you can see, but I have the packed composition pretty different from what I normally do just because I tailored it specifically for something that could work with the Shattered Shackle. So specifically you saw that I was taking that one pack which crossed out 3 of the Mirror of the Night upgrades, and that's usually very detrimental because one of those things it crosses out is something that just makes boons more common. So normally accepting that is pretty detrimental because obviously you want lots of boons, but in this case, because we are specifically avoiding any kind of core boon that goes to our attacks, special, or cast, it's really not as big of a deal as it normally is. So that's some extra heat we were able to add on and get that way. And because the dash doesn't get affected by Shattered Shackle, we can obviously take a dash there. It being the Athena dash here, obviously, the best dash in the game, so we want to keep that for the rest of the run. Also took the Chaos Boon there just because we might as well go maximum riskiness at the beginning. There's really no reason not to take a Chaos Boon this early, and that Chaos Boon will be buffing our cast even more once we endure the curse. So now the cast is going to be empowered by not only the Shattered Shackle, but also the Chaos Boon, so long as we don't put a boon on it. Here I take Ricochet Fire, which is not something I normally take. However, I thought it sounded pretty good in this case because we're using the Aspect of Hestia. And so if we get a Ricochet off of our empowered shot with the Aspect of Hestia, we're basically, we're effectively doubling the value of each empowered shot, even though we're still having to only reload once to get it. And this is also my first run with the maxed out Aspect of Hestia. I have it with all the Titan blood pumped into it possible. And so the reason I'm using Aspect of Hestia here is just because I thought it would be really fun to couple the Shattered Shackle damage with the empowered shot of Aspect of Hestia, so we can just do really big chunks of damage. And as you can see on a lot of these enemies early on in Tartarus, some of them can get even one shot killed because of how much damage this is chunking out. Obviously the damage control shields are going to absorb some of that, which is why I did not want damage control to be on max here, because then they would have an extra shield for us to get through. So honestly, I think if you were really concerned about time and you were using Aspect of Hestia, you would actually want to turn off damage control completely, because in most of these cases, when I'm taking off the damage control shield, that could have otherwise been a whole bunch of damage if the damage control shield were not there. But it's fine in this case, because I turned Jury Summons down. Normally I've been having Jury Summons on max, but I have Jury Summons down. One of the reasons why I have Jury Summons down is just because this build is going to be really, really strong early on, but I am definitely aware that the damage will start to fall off near the end. And so I did not want to run out of time if I just have to chip away at boss HP once we get to Elysium and Temple of Styx. So here I go for Athena, just because Athena could still offer me things like Sure Footing, which would be very good because Heightened Security is on here. And she just has some other defensive utility stuff like Holy Shield. I just want to make sure that I don't get stuck with something like an attack or a cast. But here, as you can see, we have something that's not a core boon. So we take, I think, actually, let's see. Do I take this or do I take the Phalanx shot so we can sell it? So the reason I take Phalanx shot here is specifically so we can have an epic boon to sell, because that will sell for more money. Even though this is ruining the Shattered Shackle buff on the cast as of right now, but I'm doing the majority of my damage with my attack right now, so there's really no reason not to just use my attack for now, which is why I didn't mind carrying around a cast boon for now. See, as you can see, we're pretty much chunking these enemies in one shot. Well, first we have to get rid of the damage control shield, and then we use one shot to get rid of the armor, and then we use one shot to take out all of their HP at once. So here again, I'm offered Athena and the heart. So I go for Athena just, again, for a chance at getting sure footing, or Holy Shield, or even the call, because there's no reason to avoid calls specifically with Shattered Shackle, because Shattered Shackle won't buff your call. Shattered Shackle won't buff your call slot, because, you know, you can't use your call unless you get a call. So it makes sense that Shattered Shackle only buffs your attack, cast, and special. So throughout this whole run, I'm going to obviously specifically avoid taking any kind of attack, special, or cast boon unless I absolutely have to. So here I take that just for the utility of it. Go for the darkness for the extra little bit of HP. I also have to remind myself in this run to not go for the keys, because I've trained myself to highly value keys, because normally the keys will give me a reroll, right? However, we don't have any rerolls in this run, because remember I said that the bottom 3 Mirror of the Night upgrades are crossed out, one of which being the ability to get rerolls from keys. And so I was about to go for the key here, but then fortunately I remembered.
I can take it.
So I go for another Chaos Boon. So what Chaos Boon do I get here? So both the top one and the middle one here are pretty interesting, because both of these would benefit my Empowered Shot quite a bit, because my Empowered Shot is my attack, so that would be getting buffed, but then the middle one would also buff subsequent damage. But I realized that the majority of my damage is coming from the Empowered Shot anyway, and I'm not really doing much of the regular shots, so I take the top one, and so that will empower my shots when I'm striking an undamaged foe, and so that'll effectively make it where it'll be easier to one-shot enemies. If there would be an enemy that I could almost one-shot with my Empowered Shot, that could potentially breach the threshold and make it so that way I can. So it's Tisiphone here, so I considered using Thanatos on her for the final phase, just because normally I do that to save a bunch of time, because when she shrinks the room down, the AoE of Thanatos is so big, it effectively fills up the entire room, and so long as you don't bait her into the hallway, it will hit her. However, I was actually surprising myself with how much damage the Aspect of Hestia was doing here, and so I ended up deciding that it wasn't really worth using a Thanatos just to save a few seconds, because normally Thanatos feels like it would save a lot of time here, but because I was chunking Tisiphone so quickly here, I didn't really need to use Thanatos, so I saved him. And the reason I'm taking Thanatos here instead of Meg is because I don't have this on Extreme Measures 4, and so I don't have much particular need to use my companion summon against Hades in the Hades fight. And so I'm just incentivized to use up all of my summon charges before we get to Hades. If it were Extreme Measures 4 and we had to fight the extra Hades phase, then I would take Meg, just so that way we could use Meg in the Hades fight. So we get rid of the Phalanx Shot, as I had planned. I also get rid of this here. Not that I need to, because you only have to sell one thing for Underworld Customs, but I sell that to get some extra money. And I use that extra money to buy the Cyclops Jerky here. Normally, I wouldn't want to waste money on just offensive stuff from the Pool of Charon, unless it were getting extended with the Charon's Hourglass, but in this case, plus 30% damage to my Empowered Shot is a pretty big deal, which is why I take it. After some thinking, There we go.
Up we go.
For a moment there, I was also considering taking Charon's Hourglass to extend that, but then I had to remember, oh wait, I can't do that because I need to keep Shattered Shackle on. Hermes has a lot of potentially good utility boons for us to take because Hermes, obviously Hermes can't fill up your attack or your special or your cast or your dash or your call slot. All of Hermes stuff is utility, so whatever we take from Hermes, we will get a benefit from. These Medusa heads are dying in one hit.
You know, cuz, since you're timing yourself, in case you haven't noticed, it doesn't count against you when we stop to have these chats.
I really like how Hermes is aware of the timer. So, Flurry Cast is actually pretty interesting here, just because our cast is already being empowered from Shattered Shackle, and like I was explaining before, it's not only getting buffed by Shattered Shackle, but also that one Chaos Boon. And so being able to expend all of those Bloodstones very quickly with the boon we just picked up is pretty nice. So that way we can just shoot out the casts real quickly, and then we can get back to using empowered shots. So I think the empowered shot still does more damage than the casts individually, but the casts are still good for getting rid of some of the damage control shields sometimes.
Off we go.
I think this is the room I get hit way too much in. Those zombie enemies are only melee, so it feels so lame when you get hit by them. But they move forward pretty quickly when they swipe at you, so sometimes it can catch you off guard.
Coin for Charon.
So the Chaos Boon evolved. And I'm still considering going for Athena here just because I still haven't gotten sure footing. And getting sure footing would be pretty helpful to get now before we do the Bone Hydra fight. But because I got hurt a lot on that room, I decided to go for the shop just so that way I can heal up a bit. But I also have enough money to buy a boon in addition to healing up, which is why I go for it. So pressure points here is very good, because now we can get crits with the empowered shot, which will be pretty big damage. And because I do have Thanatos, I use Thanatos in this room against the big enemy that spawns, because the big enemy is going to give shields to all the other enemies, and so I want to nuke him as quickly as possible.
Watch out later, okay?
As I said, dash through the gate there just to save a little bit of time.
I figured that you must have been the source of all that bloodshed underneath the earth.
And Urge to Kill is pretty good for this build, because that will be buffing everything. That will give a buff to everything which stacks with the Shattered Shackle. But when I say buff to everything, I mean everything it mentioned. But my point is that it stacks with Shattered Shackle. I'm even able to one-shot these little zombies. And you can see that by now the ricochet shot is putting in a lot of work, because this build is already lacking a little bit in terms of crowd control. But it would definitely take a lot longer to deal with these mobs without the ricochet shot, just because you are doing a lot of damage, but it would be all single target damage. But in this case, it lets you spread it out a bit.
All right.
Upgrade pressure points. That's going to have pretty good value. So I don't have enough money for a boon here, and I'm still pretty healthy, so I go for the free Zeus boon, even though Zeus couldn't potentially offer anything particularly useful for this build. But it's free, and like I said, I couldn't afford a boon in the shop. So I take Heaven's Vengeance here just because I obviously do not want to replace my Athena dash, and I do not want to put on an attack boon here. Even though I could probably be able to sell the attack boon after this boss, taking that attack boon would nerf my attack damage quite a bit, which is not something I want right before this boss. Also, I need to keep in mind that because I don't have rerolls, that also means I can't reroll my cells. So when I go to the pool of purging, I will have to sell one of the 3 things it presents to me the first time. So I'm doing a lot of damage to Lerny here, chunking it quite a bit. The only reason I really throw out my casts here is to get the cast lodged in them so it will debuff them. Because of that 1 Mirror of the Night upgrade. The ricochet shot, so nice for this weapon. So glad I picked it up. So I definitely surprised myself with how much damage I was doing there. Overall, this whole build actually held up much better than I was expecting. I was expecting it to fall off a lot harder near the end, but as you are about to see, it actually still holds up. I sell that Zeus boon immediately because it's not really much use and I need to sell something. So again, I buy the Cyclops Sturkey at the start here for the same reason I bought it at the start of Asphodel, just because our empowered shots are going to get a pretty significant damage increase from the plus 30%. And I know that at this point the enemies are going to have a lot more HP just because it's Elysium. So even though I don't have enough money for a boon here, I go for the heart just because I realize that at this point, I do not have much HP. Normally, by the time I get to Elysium, I have at least 200 HP, but for whatever reason, I just have not been picking up many hearts up to this point. So I decided it's finally time to actually start getting health. And now I have over 270 gold anyway, so now I can buy a boon. Should I enter a shop? Get the heart. Go for Hermes, just because, like I said, anything Hermes offers me will have an effect. In other words, Hermes can't offer me anything that would ruin a Shattered Shackle buff, whereas all the other gods can. So that's what makes Hermes specifically particularly enticing in this type of build. I get shot way too much in this room. Even though I can take out the archers pretty quickly, in terms of my damage, they hide behind cover, which makes them really hard to catch sometimes, and I don't have any sort of buff to my dashes at all in terms of the amount of dashes or things like hyper sprint, which I'm picking up right now. And so without hyper sprint or extra dashes or things like that, it's kind of hard to avoid the archer shots when there are multiple archers in a room at the same time. So I have to go for the hammer, obviously. I wonder if piercing shot would be good with this. Ricochet shot plus piercing shot, that sounds pretty good. I'm so used to using the Aspect of Eris that I've been sort of overlooking Aspect of Hestia, but actually using it to this degree here, it feels really satisfying. Chunking enemies like this. So here I take Cluster Bomb. Because I'm trying to prematurely reload as early as possible every time, there's really not much use for Flurry Fire at all. So the only two things that are really of any benefit here are Cluster Bomb and Triple Bomb, and I think Cluster Bomb is a little bit better than Triple Bomb. Even though neither of them are that big of a deal right now, because we're not dealing we're not really using our special very much. Even though the special is being buffed by Shattered Shackle, our attack just does so much. There's no reason not to use the attack for our primary damage source. That Artemis was tempting, but I went through the shop just because I'm low on health, and so I kind of wanted to potentially refill my health and also buy a boon since we have enough money. So I go for the heart here instead of Athena for the extra health, because at this point I still don't even have 200 HP. Even though you could definitely make a case for buying Athena there instead, that was kind of a tough decision. Potentially the Athena there might have been better because I actually never get sure footing throughout this entire run, which is something that definitely hurts, and potentially I could have gotten sure footing there. But at this point, I have not lost any Death Defiances, so I take the Hydrolite there instead of the Kissy of Styxy, which will keep me healthy going into the Theseus fight. So here I get another chance at Athena, fortunately, even though I don't get sure footing here. This is so satisfying. You could see there I was using my regular shots for a moment. I was trying to use my regular shots to finish off that ghosty, but it does so little compared to the empowered shots. So I pretty much want to reload every time I fire one of them. Also, these speedy chariots that are teleporting around are really scary. So I take Blinding Flash here. It's okay. Obviously would have preferred Holy Shield or Sure Footing, like I've been talking about. Go for Darkness just because, well, health and also avoiding a boss fight. Fountain Room to top off, even though we weren't that hurt, I will still take it. So now we go for... I only have 166 gold right now, so if I go for the gold room, it'll give me 100, and that'll make it where I have 266, so that'll make me just short of being able to buy a boon in the shop. And I see that I'm near the end of Elysium anyway, so I just go for the heart, knowing that if I went for the gold room, I wouldn't be able to buy a boon. And plus, I still don't have 200 HP, so... I want to get that. Plus, picking up the Centaur Heart right now, with my health being at max, well, potentially my HP could be at max at the end of this room, but if not max, it'll still be pretty high. Picking up the Centaur Heart will keep my health proportionate, so see there, picking up the Centaur Heart is keeping my health proportionate, so I effectively benefit a lot from the Centaur Heart. Because if you were to pick up a Centaur Heart when you're low health, you're not really going to be getting much actual HP immediately. So that is why I skipped the shop there, because I'm already healthy, so I don't need to buy HP, and like I said, I can't buy a boon. So I just go for the free palm, and I palm pressure points, which is actually pretty significant. And here is where I'm definitely expecting the game to be a lot harder than normal. I'm going to start feeling the fact that I literally don't have an attack boon. So I use Thanatos immediately here. It hit Minotaur. Obviously, ideally, you'd want it to hit both, but I just wanted it to hit at least one of them. If you use Meg here immediately, it will hit both of them. But obviously, with Thanatos, it's a risk. But I don't mind using one here because Hades is not going to get his extra phase, and so this is actually the toughest boss fight of the run, not Hades. So still pretty respectable damage. I thought this fight was going to take a lot longer. But I still definitely go for the hit and run strat against the Minotaur here. Can't believe that tracked me. So I take a lot of damage here unnecessarily. That definitely could be done better. I just want to finish off the Minotaur here really quickly, because I'm pretty confident in being able to beat Theseus without getting hit, so it's fine if I have low health. But then, see, this has been happening a lot recently. He just drives into me, and it hurts me, and I wasn't expecting it to hurt me because he wasn't even driving that fast. He wasn't doing his drive-by, he was just moving very slowly. So that was disappointing, and now I'm at 6 HP, and Theseus is almost finished here, but I do get hit right there. So that's a Death Defiance loss that could have easily been kept. But either way, I'm definitely still demonstrating the fact that you can beat Theseus here with Shattered Shackle without having too hard of a time. I was just getting hit a lot for some reason.
Enjoy the rest of your existence, Shades.
And we're still doing pretty well on time, I suspect primarily just because we have the jury summons toned down quite a bit. So I actually like all three of those things there, and I'd like to not sell any of them, so I try to go through the door here just to make sure I have Underworld Customs on, because if I did not have Underworld Customs on, I would not want to sell anything there, but I did have it on, so I sold something. So we have 14 minutes, which is quite a bit. So I'm not too worried about the sack RNG in terms of time. I'm more so just concerned about actually, you know, surviving to the boss fight. By the Centaur Heart here, while my HP is near full. So that way, you know, the health stays proportionate, and so buying the Centaur Heart now, while my health is high, I would effectively be getting more healing than if I were to buy the Centaur Heart after I get hurt a bit. So that's why I buy it now instead of saving my money, because there is a case to be made that I should have saved my money in case I encounter a Pool of Charon that offers me a Kiss of Styx to refill my Death Defiance. But that never shows up here, so I was actually right to buy the Centaur Heart first. Couldn't miss that money pot. Going through the Temple of Styx rooms without sure footing and also without Holy Shield is pretty scary. Normally you'd want at least one of those to go through here comfortably. In hindsight, it probably would have been better if I turned heightened security off and just upped something else. Kind of spoiling the fact that I'm going to get hit by a trap in the near future here. Me breaking my own rule of don't get hit, forehead. Just don't walk into traps, forehead. Then heightened security isn't even a problem. I can almost two-shot those enemies. So Hunter's Mark would be really nice here, but this is the first time in which I am forced to take a boon that will ruin a Shattered Shackle buff. So out of the three things here, I take the special because the special is the thing we are using the least. So even though it is going to ruin our Shattered Shackle buff, it's not that big of a deal, but there is a pool of purging here, so I check it to see if I can immediately get rid of that special upon getting it, but I cannot, and remember, I can't re-roll my cells, so I have to keep it in the meantime. But like I said, not that big of a deal, since the attack is the main source of damage, and then the cast is used as sort of a secondary source of damage, and there's really not much use for the Cluster Bomb. The main use of Cluster Bomb here is just to remove the damage control shields. As you can see, there's no Kiss of Styx offered here. So there's no chance of me refilling a Death Defiance. So I go for the healing instead. I consider going for Yarn of Ariadne, but I don't even know what boon I'd be going for after this. And I remember that there's that pomegranate I still haven't gotten, so I just saved my money for my pomegranate. Because there are a few things that I have that can scale pretty well with pomegranates, as I've been seeing with the pressure points. Pressure point scales pretty well with pomegranates. Also, Urge to Kill. That Ares boon, if that's what it's called. The one that buffs your attack, special, and cast. Plus, buying the Yarn of Ariadne there wouldn't affect what we're getting in this room because we're getting a Centaur Heart. Also, that was an awful turn of events. I ate 40 damage, and then that enemy walked out of my Thanatos attack. But it's actually been a while since I've fought this particular mid-boss. And so, if I was more familiar with it, I actually would have saved my Thanatos for that enemy right there, the one shooting out those lasers. I think that would have been a better use of Thanatos. But either way, I still clear the room fairly quickly.
Let's just go down this Sata hole.
You know that if you take something like Thanatos, you're going to hit some, you're going to miss some. I consider taking that palm right now, but I save my money just in case another pool of Charon shows up, so I can have potentially one more chance at getting the Kiss of Styx, even though that doesn't happen. Oof. I know what's about to happen here. Okay, there's the 100 damage. There's the one trap hit. Don't worry, I was just checking to make sure that heightened security was on. So that would not have happened if I had sure footing. So it makes me think back to that one Athena I skipped early on. That one extra Athena I skipped early on. If that could have potentially been the sure footing. Because that would have stopped me from taking 100 damage from one trap.
Wrong chamber.
I definitely would have gone for that Athena early on if I had rerolls, but remember, I don't have rerolls here, and so normally I'm pretty confident about getting either the dash or sure footing from Athena in a normal run because I know that I can reroll for it because usually I save several dice for Athena specifically. But in this case, I'm just going to be offered 3 things from Athena. And so, yeah, she could offer me sure footing, but there's a lot of other stuff she could offer me too that I don't really care about. Tiny Vermin here, doing a lot of damage to me because he's so fast. And I did hit him with Thanatos. So that was definitely a worthy use. I think I hit him with Thanatos. Wasn't paying too much attention to it. To the actual HP. So it's kind of a shame that was not the Satyr Sack room, because I have 11 HP after that. So now I have enough money that I can buy this pomegranate and still have enough money to potentially buy a Kiss of Styx. Urge to Kill, that is what it's called. So I have to be very careful here. Whew. Every time I hear that satyr wind up for his blow dart, that was terrifying. Nothing I want to sell here. Oh wait, never mind, yes. Definitely want to sell Deadly Flourish. So I finally was able to get rid of my special. And look at that. I'm not even in front of that dirty rat, and yet it still bites me. Okay. And now I lost yet another Death Defiance. One that could have been saved if the sack RNG was a bit better. Or, potentially, if I had gotten sure footing, I would not have lost all the HP from the trap, and I would have been able to take that hit there. So now we find the Satyr Sack. Finally, upgrade Urge to Kill. And now we buy that last palm. And upgrade Pressure Points once more, plus 6% chance, which is pretty nice. And even though we only have one Death Defiance, that's a little scary, but I'm not too worried about this fight because, as I've been saying, I'm only really concerned about the Hades fight when it's Extreme Measures 4. But without that, the worst is definitely behind us. The worst being the Theseus fight and the Temple of Styx itself. And I have a lot of time here, 8 minutes.
No matter how quickly you're able to get here, I shall be waiting.
Ready.
Even with the casts being buffed by the Shattered Shackle and that Chaos Boon, they do not do much damage compared to the Empowered Shot from Hestia. Looking at the damage numbers now. But the main reason I shoot out my Bloodstones there was specifically to get it lodged in Hades, so that way I would debuff him. The Aspect of Hestia here is also doing a pretty good job of eliminating his minions pretty quickly, which is always the most annoying part of the Hades fight. Phase 1 is so chaotic, especially depending on what he summons. So he's already at less than half HP, which is pretty impressive to me.
Your eyes deceive you, boy.
I'll send your wretches back where they belong. Tartarus, this isn't what it looked like.
Shall you drag into this
That was a pretty nice Thanatos, if I say so myself.
wide open?
So that makes up for the Thanatos whiff from earlier. So now I'm not worried at all, because Phase 2 is way easier than Phase 1. Although I have to be very careful around those urns because of not having sure footing. The urns count as trap damage, so a couple urns will kill me. So normally I would try to dash around Hades when he's doing those triple lasers so I could cash in some extra damage, but I do not deem it worth the risk here because it is not worth running into an urn. If I had sure footing, I definitely would try to dash around him, but here I'm just trying my best to avoid urns at all costs. Because that is the one thing that could potentially ruin the run at this point, realistically. I deflected that skull so far away. Yeah, the skulls, you can take out the skull's HP in one shot with Hestia as well. So the Empowered Shot dealing extra damage to unharmed foes is still having a pretty good benefit this late into the run. And we take him out pretty easily. So that was definitely way better than I was expecting. I knew it would be viable, but I thought it would be a little rougher than that. So considering how smooth that actually went, even though I lost 2 Death Defiances, those could definitely easily be avoided because I could have played the Theseus boss better. And if I had gotten sure footing, I probably wouldn't have lost the second one. That also probably was due to bad sack RNG too. But anyways, my point is, I think I definitely proved that this build is viable enough to even do 40 heat maybe. I'm really tempted to try out 40 heat with this build now. because I thought 32 was going to be really rough with it, but actually not. And here I'm highlighting the things that were of most use in the run. Ricochet Fire obviously was really good for Hestia. Pressure Points, we got that up to level 5, which is really nice, even though we never got Hunter's Mark. That's still pretty good in and of itself. Urge to Kill buffs all of the stuff that Shattered Shackle is also buffing, so that's nice. Then you saw the other things I listed there.
In his great hurry to explore the countryside, the hapless-footed prince steps on the peel of a most exotic, sallow-colored fruit, and tumbles backward with such sudden, violent force that you know what.
Whoa, banana peel. What a sad way to go. Slipping on a banana peel. Anyways, thanks for watching, everyone. Let me know in the comments if you liked the video or not. Well, first of all, if you like the video, hit the like button. And then let me know in the comments if you have anything to say or if you have any questions. And let me know what you'd like to see for the next Hades run if you have any ideas. But I still definitely have ideas myself. So either way, I will see all of you later.
Maybe focusing the traffic flow through here a little bit to keep the hallway clearer and, oh, I don't know, put some sort of time limit in place.
You know, can't say I have. I've got my registration list and I have had to keep a careful eye on it. With all the shades that have been pouring in, it's really gotten slow around here.
It definitely has. I have to go. Hope you get yourself some rest, okay?
You bet.